Hey, in this video I'd like to tell you about the next important setting, which is aperture. So now you have mastered the shutter speeds, which means the exposure time. So now it's time for you to master aperture. Okay, what is it actually? Let me show you on the example of this lens. I will remove the cap. The aperture basically is the opening here through which light comes in. And this lens has got dedicated aperture ring, which allows me to regulate aperture manually. So if you look now in the camera, you can see it's opening and closing. Yeah, I can close it to something very small or open it almost to the max. This is the maximum, this is the minimum. So what does it do? Well, if the aperture is big, then obviously more light comes in than when it's small. What that means? It means that the bigger the aperture, the shorter exposure time is necessary. And just to remind you, exposure time means shutter speed. So if you make the aperture smaller, you need longer exposure time to have the same exposure or the same brightness in the picture. Now, when is it useful? Normally, we want to have the exposure time as short as possible because we don't want to have things blurry. We want everything to be sharp, right? So the quicker the shorter the exposure time, the better. But there might be situations when you want to introduce the blur, as we discussed before. However, there is a lot of light, for example, sunlight. And this will not allow you to take photo with long exposure time because it will be very bright. So then you can decrease the aperture, make the aperture smaller, and therefore take longer exposure and have those effects. That would be one usage of aperture. So let's focus on that use. What I want you to do is to find in your camera the setting for aperture, make experiments, and see what difference it makes. Once you've done it, we will go and discuss another aspect of aperture, which is depth of field. Now, in your camera, you will find the settings, and the aperture is measured in f number. Now, to make it a little bit more confusing and complicated, the smaller the f number, the bigger the aperture. So, unfortunately, it's not congruent. So, the f number decreases, the aperture increases. That's how it works. Aperture means opening. That's what aperture is. I trust I pronounce it properly. If I don't, sorry for that. We can just call it opening, or this thing regulated by or characterized by the f number. If you want to read more technical details about this, I refer you to resources on the internet, on Wikipedia. You can read quite a lot of it, but you don't really need it to understand it and to take good photos and you know, use it creatively in taking photos. So now go take photos with different aperture value, different f number. So if you've been taking with f 3.5, let's say, go and use f12, f20, whatever your camera allows you to use. And I'll see you in the next video when I will teach you something else about aperture. Thank you.